So there's been a lot of buzz about Elden Ring on social media lately, not only because the game was just so successful and so many people are sharing their experiences about some of the crazy things that can happen in the game, but there are aspects of the conversation that unfortunately have turned sour after certain developers decided to take to Twitter to lambast the fact that the game was so critically successful because they had certain issues with aspects of the game's UX, its stability and performance, and its quest design. And there are criticisms here that are fair. You know, the game UX isn't perfect. There are things about it that I'd like to see improved. And UX stands for user experience. By the way, user interfaces, UI, that's kind of the visual representation of the UX, if that makes sense. UX being just the kind of the intuitiveness of how features of the game work, if that makes sense. Stability and performance, that's definitely a major issue. That's the biggest blemish this game has that I hope FromSoft will resolve soon. PC graphics, I don't get the complaint. If referring to fidelity specifically, the game still looks gorgeous. Art style trumps graphics every time, in my opinion. Now, if referring to PC graphics settings, then yeah, on that front, there are certain things lacking, like ultra-wide support and, you know, unlocking the frame rate and stuff like that, which is fair. Quest design, for me, the way Elden Ring does it isn't worse, it's just different and may not be for everyone, but doesn't make it objectively worse. So this one I don't quite agree with, but criticisms are one thing, but it's just more the expression of like the fact that Elden Ring scored a 97 Metacritic is proof that reviewers don't give a flaming poop about these flaws that we notice. My life is a lie, and the fact that these developers are almost like agreeing that Elden Ring doesn't deserve to be as critically successful as it is because there are certain issues that they have with aspects of the game, just I feel like ignores not only the totality of the experience of Elden Ring, which has enough pros to outshine the cons, but also it feels like they're being salty. It feels like they're being petty and almost like trying to throw Elden Ring under the bus. And to me, the intent does feel mean-spirited, especially if you look at this screenshot of another tweet by the same developer who said, Elden Ring's UX is so bad that I can only imagine FromSoft's devs smoking at their desks and using CRT monitors. This isn't criticism, this is just straight up mean-spirited attack against the actual developers. Like, to me, the saltiness of these tweets are pretty apparent. And the end result is that this has all led to a whole lot of backlash, and people have been pointing out things like how this is a Ubisoft developer and this is a Guerrilla developer, both of who have released open-world games, who kind of follow the same formulaic open-world style that has become a bit too commonplace, a bit too stagnant, though I do think Horizon Forbidden West actually takes that formula and does it right and does it really well, but it could still feel somewhat formulaic here and there, in my opinion. And so coming from them saying that, you know, Elden Ring doesn't deserve its big score, or that reviewers don't seem to care about certain flaws, ignoring what Elden Ring does accomplish from an open world design standpoint, and not being able to at least give it credit before criticizing the things that, you know, can be criticized. That's where a lot of people took issue. It's more about the attitude of the criticism rather than the criticism itself. And that has instigated tweets like this. I founded the Elden Ring with the good UX, which has garnered over 80,000 likes. And what sucks about the approach of criticism here is that these few developers who don't necessarily represent the companies or studios as a whole have caused backlash against the studios as a whole. I don't believe all of Guerrilla thinks this way. It's just one Guerrilla developer who said this. I don't think all of Ubisoft's developers think this way. It's just this one guy who had this take to share. And what this has caused is just the flaming of tribalism, and now people are suddenly attacking studios and saying, oh, this game's better and that game's better, and, you know, Elden Ring deserves this, and screw Horizon Forbidden West, when, you know, I feel like both games can coexist, and the conversation doesn't have to turn into this, like, war between Elden Ring community and Horizon community, or, you know, Elden Ring enthusiasts versus Horizon enthusiasts. Like, both games can coexist. They have both their own takes on open world design. I don't think that the more formulaic open world design has to go away entirely. I think multiple kinds of open world formats can exist. It's just refreshing what Elden Ring does, because all open world games have become lately is some sort of that Ubisoft formula. And that's kind of the main thing that I drive. But I'm ultimately glad that Horizon Forbidden West resonated with tons of people. And I've met people both who prefer Elden Ring or who prefer Horizon Forbidden West, but still respect and appreciate the other. But the conversation has turned into people flaming studios and the other game because of how these developers approach the criticism that has caused this conversation to heat up a bit too much. Now, on the other side of things, you've got a former Ubisoft developer who's spoken out about the way these developers approach their criticism and who agreed with audiences saying that AAA open world games have become a bit too formulaic and a bit too stale. And I'd like to read this take, which is different from these developers and kind of, I think, represents the other side of things. Here's what he had to say. Let it be heard, let it be noted that I lament greatly and with satisfaction that the Ubisoft formula that is permeated into all major AAA open world games is tired and rote, from quest design to UX, everything about it. And I do agree with this. Even Horizon Forbidden West, to a degree, gave me that sense, even though the game did a good version of this formula where it wasn't stuffed to the brim with very grindy and very generic feeling activities and quests. It didn't feel like the game overstayed its welcome. The graphics were beautiful and it had all these great things going for it, but it still followed that formula, whereas Elden Ring, for me, felt like it just did something really that felt refreshing. This former Ubisoft developer continued, I just hate that every major AAA open world game has the same quest design, has the same checkpointing, has the same waypointing, all the same bells and whistles. And this really goes to show that not all developers necessarily feel that the Ubisoft formula or the traditional open world formula that's all open world games has become is strictly the way to go. There are developers out there who are seeking to drive more ambitious risks and ambitious designs that kind of break away from the mold that so many games have stuck with, so that refreshing and compelling experiences like Elden Ring can kind of rise to the top. But of course, ground floor developers don't get to necessarily define the direction of the game. That's up to executives and creative heads and, whatever their goals might be with a game. But it just feels like games played a bit too safe, a bit too often. And that's where I do agree with this. And I just wish it would stop. I'm thankful for a game like Breath of the Wild, which was doing a good job of breaking the mold, though it still had its hands in the Ubisoft formula. And now Elden Ring pushing as the antithesis to the standard open world format. Listen, I enjoy all these games. I'm going to list, but there is definitely a problem when they all feel so samey. Ghost of Tsushima, Assassin's Creed, Horizon, Halo Infinite, Far Cry, etc. And yeah, I actually do concur there. Even Ghost of Tsushima, which was my game of the year in the year that the game came out, could feel formulaic, but there are so many things that made up for that, like the combat just being amazing, the visuals, especially the way the foliage makes the world feel like it's breathing with how it's constantly swaying, the design of the world, and I like the story personally, and there's so many good facets of that game that made up for the fact that it was somewhat formulaic, and I think there's so much potential for these franchises to kind of expand their horizons when it comes to open world design and pave the road to something that evokes a bit more engagement from players instead of this sense of constantly being handheld and navigated. Alex finished off with, instead of always doubling down on what has the best mass market appeal and always doing exactly what the mass market expects, please start taking more risks. Indeed, when Demon's Souls was first proposed and, as the game was being made, everyone thought this game was going to flop, including Sony, the publisher. They did not like this game. They just wanted to get it out there and get it over with, but it ended up being a risk worth taking. It kickstarted a whole new subgenre, which I think peaks with Elden Ring, with how the open world design has been so well integrated with that formula. And I wish there would be more risks like that, but because publishers like to play it safe, because they know safe brings them money, that's where creativity gets stifled. That's where it feels like it takes too long for new boundaries to be pushed and new molds to be broken in. We like the comfort food, but at this moment, the entire buffet is just one type of bread. This is a great way to put it. Again, it's okay to have more comfort food-based, more accessible open world with, map markers and that are more navigated, like Horizon Forbidden West, or like Assassin's Creed or Ghost of Tsushima, or all these other games. But we just need a bit more variance, because it's all been comfort food as far as open world design goes, and that's where I do agree here. I'll leave this open for more things I have to say and just keep it in this thread, but yeah, it really does bug me. And I do like this developer's take, because this is actually a more nuanced take compared to just a simple, why does this game get so much praise from reviewers who don't seem to care about flaws? Whereas this developer is looking at from like, there are good things about all of these games, but can we just vary it up a little bit? Can we not just pretend like the Assassin's Creed formula, the Ubisoft open world formula, is the only way to do it? And Ubisoft especially has been called out quite a bit after the Ubisoft developer here called out Elden Ring, which is ironic coming from a developer working for a company whose, UX and overall game design has become so stale, so complacent to its design, to the point where all of their games feel kind of the same. And so when it comes to the community, you will see people talking about how if Elden Ring was a Ubisoft game, you would have paid real money in their store to get the Stone Sword key. For those who don't know what this is an item that you have to find. There are a number of them scattered throughout the world. You'll find them, by opening up treasure chests, by looting them from corpses, by defeating enemies, you name it. You have to look for these, and these open certain sort of secret dungeons or little secret areas where you'll find cool new rewards like lootable chests that will yield new weapons and new rewards, new items, whatnot. These are important to sort of the side activities of the game. Now, while Jez here insists that these are jokes, and I doubt Ubisoft would actually charge money for something like the Stone Sword Key, but they do similar crap, I could not disagree with this take more. If Ubisoft had their hands on Elden Ring, they would absolutely allow you to earn the Stone Sword Keys in-game, but hey, we got this alternative where you can buy them in the store, because these are time savers and they're optional, and we're just giving you the option to skip the compelling gameplay of exploration and of finding these and then like going through this cycle of wonder and discovery and unlocking these. They're not really time savers, they are solution to an intentionally introduced grind problem, or they're basically a giant pay money to skip compelling content of the game button. And that's one area where Horizon Forbidden West and games like that stand above the Ubisoft games, even though they kind of follow the same formula. Horizon Forbidden West wasn't designed around microtransactions and around grindy content. It was paced just right. It's a game with integrity, whereas games like Assassin's Creed, they do shove in microtransactions that either allow you to skip compelling content of the game or that try to resolve the intentionally introduced grindy aspect of a game and its various sort of grindy and monotonous activities. And that's what makes Elden Ring all the more refreshing. There's zero microtransactions. No aspect of the game feels like it was influenced by monetization. Everything just feels so well thought out and organic, and it just paves the road for an experience that feels ideal, like it was exactly what the developers envisioned, like it was really made out of love and not out of greed. And so that's why people are kind of going out of their way now that the Ubisoft developer has suddenly like criticized Elden Ring in a way that feels cynical and not constructive. This is why the community is putting stuff like this out, and now this poses up to, over 22,000 upvotes, and this is kind of the conversation that's happening. They've kind of now rallied against Ubisoft, and that's what can happen when one developer decides to, in a way that feels salty, lambast another game's success when their own games just have fallen short in areas where Elden Ring really rises above and beyond. And here's the thing, even the community acknowledges that there are aspects of Elden Ring to criticize. When it comes to UX, for example, it was noted right here, PSA, you can sort the inventory for the love of God, make this top so others see it. And literally in my last video I was talking about how the game could use at least like a recent items tab or something, because the inventory in Elden Ring quickly gets filled up, and when you find a new item, you often find yourself having to look for it so you can either use it or read its description to see what it does. Well, it is highlighted here how there is a feature where you can press the L1 button to sort the game by order of acquisition, but it is not listed in the help section. So look, there are aspects of the UX to criticize. The community even criticizes the UX and aspects of it in some way. But are these aspects all so detrimental that the game doesn't deserve the high praise it gets for where it does shine above and beyond so many other open world games? I don't think so. Does it deserve this tone of criticism, this level of, again, saltiness or pettiness or jealousy, whatever you want to call it, where it feels like they're underplaying the game's success rather than just saying, here are some areas where I have issues with? I don't think this is the right approach. I hope that this kind of approach to communication isn't something that becomes commonplace. I do like Alex's take here, this former Ubisoft dev who is respectful but direct about his criticism surrounding why this feedback isn't helpful or constructive, or how open world games these days have become complacent, and a Ubisoft dev who has worked on games that are very formulaic, just sort of talking trash is what it feels like here. It just is rather ironic. And also, this is the same individual who also played a part in Battlefield 2042's UI and UX, and we all know all about that game. The UI and UX in that game has been criticized quite a bit as well, so it's just, there's that level of irony as well on top of all of that. But at the end of the day, look, let's just appreciate the fact that amazing games are coming out this year. Like, 2022 is looking like an awesome year for games, and I think every one of those good games can be appreciated for their own reasons without us having to pit them against each other, because at the end of the day, the options are there, and it's your choice to buy the game that resonates with you. Elden Ring resonated with me. Horizon resonated with me enough that I still enjoyed it, even if I ultimately prefer Elden Ring, but I'm glad they both exist. I'm glad people are able to enjoy what they want to enjoy, and that's really what matters, I think. Yeah, with all said and done, this is one man's take, and additional context on this Elden Ring discourse and all of the negative discussion that's been going on as a result of certain developers just being a little mean-spirited about the way they criticize the game. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on this whole discourse, and have you played Elden Ring and Horizon Forbidden West? What are your takes on those games, and what's your take on Alex's feedback here, this former Ubisoft dev? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.